Hello, everybody. We'll be starting shortly.
I don't want to. So I think that's about where we're at. I can't hear you, Mark. No audio.
You can't hear anything?
Now I can. Great.
Joe, we can't hear you. Is your audio
Let me double
enabled?
check.
Can you hear
Let's see.
me?
Um, yeah, I can hear you.
Can you
Um,
hear me?
yes, I can hear you, but you can't hear me. Um, Let me check.
We can't hear you yet. Why don't you work on that? I'm going to add your background. I'm going to replace my background with yours so the audience can see it. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we'll start in just a minute here. Here we go. How's that, Joe?
Okay. Can you hear me?
That's the background with your QR code on it,
Can you hear
so
me,
people
Mark?
can. I can't hear you at all.
Okay. How about now? Can you hear me?
I don't hear you yet. Go into your settings.
Yeah, I'm in my
You might
settings.
try the Zoom Workplace setting under the Zoom
Okay.
menu. Go into
Okay.
sound. Maybe something is disabled there.
Yeah. Okay. How about now? Can you hear me now? How about now?
I
Can you
don't
hear
hear
me?
you yet.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me now? How about
Are you
now?
able to perhaps dial back in? Maybe there's just
Yep.
something funky going on with your
Yep. I'll
Zoom app.
be right back.
I still don't hear you. Dial back in, Joe. Sorry for the delay, people in the audience. We're having some technical difficulty on Joe's end. In the meantime, there's a couple of QR codes here, and the one in green is Joe's WeChat code. And he's offering a free assessment if people connect with him during this 1 hour. He'll give a free 30-minute assessment as a coach and help you figure out if there's any opportunity for you to uh, improve your assertiveness, ask you some questions, and see if there's an opportunity for you to grow in the workshop that he's offering called Assert with Confidence, which is the QR code above in the black. So scan his QR code, add him to your chat, reach out to him in the next 60 minutes. Hey, never hurts to have free assessment from a professional coach, especially someone with Joe's credentials.
Mark, can you hear me?
Joe, I cannot hear you at all. I'm sorry. I know it's frustrating, but
Hello, hello.
let's
Can
see
you hear
what
me?
people are saying. Oh, you can hear Joe.
Can you
Okay.
hear me?
So
Yeah,
people can hear both of you. For some reason, I can't hear you, Joe. I don't know what's going on there.
that's a problem.
Are you discriminating against me that I can't hear you?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me, Mark? Can you hear
Joe,
me?
if they can hear you, I think what I can do is I'll put my audio on mute. Maybe you just call my phone while you're talking. I can hear what they hear. How's that sound?
As long as they can hear me. Um,
Just call in with your phone. Keep this on because they can hear you. And I'm just going to disable my audio while you're speaking. Okay, let's try that so we can kick it off here.
okay, here we go.
Here we go. Hello, Joe.
Okay, Mark, no echo?
No echo so far. Audience, can you hear everything fine? Check my speakers. Let me do that. Let me check my speakers. Maybe I'm the problem here.
You're gonna have to turn off
Right.
one or the other, Mark.
You're right. Hey, uh, Dragon Eagle TV, you guys are geniuses. All right, we have the problem solved. We had a great recommendation from our sponsor, Dragon Eagle TV, one of our sponsors for many years now. Okay, welcome everybody. And this
Question
is,
is, Mark, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Great, we're good.
Okay, we're kicking off now. Okay, welcome everybody. Glad to have you here on short notice. Today's topic is around innovation, how to become an innovation athlete, someone who can develop that skill and develop more capabilities and apply it more broadly. And before we jump into the meat of this discussion, I'm going to have Joe talk a little bit, a few minutes about his assertiveness workshop. And I think you still have two seats left on one of the six-person
Right,
team. Am I right, Joe?
that's correct. That's correct. Couple
Okay.
spots open still.
And it starts on Saturday. Why don't you give everyone just a brief rundown of what it is, how long it goes for, and what people can expect to walk away with? Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, we start this Saturday, 3 o'clock, 3 to 5. It's a 2 hour session, and we will have four successive sessions every Saturday for the next 4 weeks, 3 to 5 p.m. That's Pacific Coast time. And if you were here last week, you know a little bit about my perspective, Mark's perspective on assertiveness. We think it's the number one skill that you need to have above all. My approach to it is twofold. One, to really make you an assertive listener as well as an assertive speaker. So if you want to know what that means, please come to the class. And we work up very hard on the emotional intelligence it takes to know your own triggers, to control them, to enter into dialogue, go beyond monologue. So you may assert yourself, you may say something that set a boundary, but then after that, we forget that someone's going to blow back. Someone's going to disagree with our assertions and or question them. So you've got to be ready for part two. So assertiveness is not simply showing up and speaking up. It's dealing with the whole process. And that's what we're going to unpack for the next four sessions.
Okay. And as it
And the QR
pertains,
codes, QR codes right there, I think. Yeah.
yeah, so the one QR code on the bottom in green, that's the WeChat to get the
Ah,
free assessment with you. You want to
right.
talk about that?
Yeah. So what I'm going to do until for the next hour, until this webinar is over, if you want to get a kind of an assertiveness assessment, very focused on assertiveness, I want to give you that feedback. I have a very pointed one question that I ask you, and then I see how you do, and then I give you a tip after that as to what I think you should do. And the tip part is really important because everyone's different, and it has to do specifically with your personality type and where you are on the spectrum, so to speak, or if you're more tend to be more aggressive or more passive, then my tip follows that suit. And of course, I'd love to have you in the class. I mean, really, it's a rare thing to be in a space with six people Max, who can really understand you because they're going through the exact same thing, encourage you, and then together we really come out on the other end. I think it's transformational, this particular course, more than anything I teach. So I hope you can join us. And
Okay.
take advantage of this assessment. It's great. It's a lot of fun. I have one very pointed question I ask, and it's a lot of fun to see how people respond. So and just do it in the next hour, and just well, all you got to have to do is just connect with me and say, "Hey, Joe, I was on the webinar. I'd like to do the assessment," and then we'll set up the time from there. But you've got to do this within the next hour. That's my
Hey,
thought.
if I do it, can I get a free assessment, Joe?
No, Mark, you cannot do it, Mark.
No, come
You
on.
know that, Mark. No, no, no. I'm going to assess you one-on-one privately. You know what I think of you anyway, so no, no, you're not. You can't do that, Mark.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't want to
I don't
take
want
up
to take up anyone's.
anyone's window there. Okay. Now, Joe, you also work with innovation. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your exposure and what you do? I think you do this in conferences with a Columbia University with their startup program. Why don't you share a little bit about that and your insights on innovation?
Yeah, yeah. I've been working with the Columbia Business School for years in a program called Venture for All. And what we do is we prepare young people anywhere from, well, now they're dipping down even further. They're going to middle school, which they didn't do before. And in China, they even do an elementary school program, which was really fun to see, Mark. The kids, and they really rise to the occasion. But the program that we really designed and developed in China and then here in New York as well is designed for late high school, just going into college. And this is a boot camp program, 8 days, to familiarize uh, youth with the concept of what the entrepreneurial mindset really is, how to go from ideation through to actual MVP, and then trying to do pitching for funding, the whole process. But the main thing that the big takeaway I get from students after they've done this is really to think innovatively. What does it mean to get out of the box? Because I think especially when it comes to design, we tend to look at design. We look for design. We tend to look at, if you're going to design a glass, you just look at more glasses as opposed to what we like to do in the boot camp is to really get out of the box of what's typically done and then really start thinking in new ways, but then go from there to how do you actually create a product that is uh, something that actually can be produced and manufactured in the deepest sense, produced to for sale. But the really interesting part is really how do you do the marketing? How do you get the eyeballs on there? All the distribution work. There's so many facets to it. So we're actually doing a program here, Mark, in Palo Alto. We're going to be doing this in July. This is for high school kids, maybe some middle schoolers. But again, the last point is that this was program really started because we were trying to help kids prepare themselves for Ivy League schools. Straight up, I'll be honest with you. We were working with Harvard, Columbia, all the big schools, big Ivies, MIT, and Caltech, and we would do these courses there as well as in China, but really trying to give kids this opportunity to learn this work and then be able to put that on their resume. And then we, of course, because I knew them intimately, we're all writing recommendations for them. And we've had kids go all the way through it. Also, we have an entrepreneurship, a model entrepreneurship competition every summer. This year, we'll be in Hong Kong this year. We've done it in Tokyo, around Asia. But what we do there is that we get like, last year we had, what, 600 applicants, and we narrowed it down to a viable group that really just came up with some incredible projects. And we have a group of judges that run through it. I actually teach a course, a prep course for that competition, a special course. And then we also have Susan Wozecki's mother. She actually is behind this. Susan is the one of the original founders of Google. I used to work for Susan years ago, but her mom got involved in this, and she's doing a lot of the work that really has to do with leadership and communication for the era of AI, the kind of stuff that I do. So we're aligned on that. So we embed that into the program. So it's really a lot of fun.
So
But the most
if you were to give like a kernel of wisdom to the audience to help them become more innovative in their approach to solving problems, what kernel would you donate to them?
Well, to really get out of, really understand the difference between, level one, level two thinking, thinking fast, thinking slow. And, Kahneman, all these people have written about this. He was probably the signature person, but it's really if you're looking to innovate, you really have to understand the fidelity between the pain and your solution. This concept for me means you've really got to know your audience. You have to do a lot of user study. We're not Steve Jobs here, most of us. Steve Jobs invented for you and me. But most of us have to go out and study the market. And that means intensive user study. I think this is highly misunderstood and misused, in fact. Spending time, because you tend to spend time with focus groups and things, which is a good general start. But you really need to work with a trusted group of users that you can go back to and really tap so that you can really understand what the pain is. The metaphor I like to use, Mark, is I remember when I lived in China and I had a problem with my foot, and I went to Lao Wang, the acupuncturist that we used at the university where I was teaching, and so he stuck a needle in my head.
Mm.
I said, Lao, what are you doing? Well, why? I said the pain's in my foot, and he said, yeah, Joe, but the problem is your head. Now, the problem is the meridian up here. It's the energy flow up in here we have to unblock, but that's going to help down here with the foot based on the theory. And that just hit home because that's what we don't do. You think, our customers always say, God, well, I want the hamburger. The hamburger looks really good. They go to McDonald's. But what they really need is the salad. And so you're constantly attacking between what you have to offer and what you think they need, what's really the best solution for them. You have all that sense, but then they have their sense of what they think they need. So you have to sift through all that. So I think the number one tip I have, apart from, the thinking slow is really taking this time before you rush to anything to really understand your user's pain and then
Mhm.
working into that fidelity where you say, yeah, what we've got to offer really is going to fix it. It's like the toothache at 3 in the morning. I
Mhm.
mean, you're going for a dentist. You need to hit that kind of pain point and understand what the solution really would be, and
Okay.
then you jump in on it. That's my innovative thought.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to share my perspective as
Yeah,
well. And Joe's only got until 6:30. Then he has a client
I
meeting
get
he
this.
has to jump
Yeah,
into.
yeah, yeah.
And we're going to bring you back on at 6:25. I got a few minutes here. And you know what I'd like to share is I've been in tech for since 1987. That's when I was hired into my first high tech position working with products. I was a product planning analyst, which means that I was involved in development of new products. And these were two-way radio products. And the first radios I got to work on were encrypted, ruggedized, uh, portable radios, walkie-talkies that we sold to the government, to the military, to the White House security, Navy SEALs, aircraft carrier flight decks, military police, and U.S. bases around the world. So these were encrypted, so they were like highly controlled technology, and it was a crash course for me. And I had to master so many different technologies and aspects of communicating. Eventually, I was allowed to work on other products, commercial products, things that went to public safety, utility companies, landscapers, casinos. And I moved from
Hmm.
portable radios to networks. So the
Yeah,
infrastructure. And then
yeah.
after I mastered that, I had the whole thing,
Mm,
entire systems with
mm,
the things installed in vehicles, the things carried on people's hips, the accessories, the networks, the control centers,
mm.
everything, right?
Yeah.
And folks are quite amazed to hear that I got promoted every year.
Mm,
Most people got promoted every 3 years at Motorola. I was climbing so fast, and
mm,
people thought like, what is this guy's superpower? And
mhm,
I didn't have any superpowers. I was an introvert.
mhm,
I was in marketing. I didn't have an engineering degree. Most of
mhm.
my peers,
Yeah.
and even in the
Mhm,
marketing department, were
mm,
engineers, software
mm,
engineers, electrical engineers, and people were asking like, "What is this guy's
mm,
superpower?"
Hmm.
And I didn't have any superpower except for one, and
Hmm.
that was my ability to innovate. I was
Hmm.
able to come up with entirely new ways of doing everything. So within a year of joining that company, I had designed the marketing, the new product development process, including the tools we used to define market segments and prioritize their needs and establish their value and
Hmm.
create a portfolio map where, we could have different products spaced in the market so they don't cannibalize each other, right? Because
Hmm.
cannibalizing your own products is a way to lose money. So, there were so many new products new categories of products that I identified in my process.
Hmm.
And eventually, I was recognized in the company with a distinguished Innovator Award. I got a special badge as if I was an R&D guy with a bunch of patents because within 10 years, I had 20 of my own patents.
Wow.
And, most of the engineers would go their whole career maybe with one patent or two
Hmm.
patents. And it
Hmm.
was usually things that they were, Joe, try to mute your mic because they can't see the QR codes when you make a noise. There we go. So, so usually engineers were assigned a project to work on, and then after they designed the work, if it was really unique and distinctive, the company would patent that. The things I came up with were ideas I pulled out of my brain, and these were identified as high value new concepts that they put on the roadmap to the future. And some of these ideas were so far in the future, it took 14 years for technology to be able to actually produce that as a viable commercial product. So I had this ability to process information and come up with solutions that were very unique and high value, even though I had no engineering degree. And some of the things that I use, the techniques I use, is what I'd like to share with you. And I'll be doing it when we have a little bit of time after Joe jumps to his next meeting. Um, but just put a pin in that for now, because when we come back to me, I'm going to go through the story, how this drive to be creative started, and you can start at any age, believe me. And then what are some of the techniques I used to be able to constantly innovate and identify opportunities to innovate? Believe me, throughout your day, you will encounter so many opportunities to innovate. You just have to know how to look for them. And I will share my insights on that. So, Joe, before you have to leave, any words you want to share again about the free coaching assessment or your assertiveness workshop that starts on Saturday?
No, but what you're telling, yes and no. First of all, what you're saying, Mark, is really brilliant, and I think I wish I could stay to hear your story because I think uh, this is one of the things that goes on in our boot camps. We see kids come up with ideas that are extraordinary based on their understanding of the market need. So that's what I wanted to ask you, and I'll save it for another day, but because it's still based on you're building things for a marketplace. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like, right, it's not like you see great ideas and whatever. And you're not a painter, you're not an art. I mean, you're a builder creating for a marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
So and if we scale it down to my world in that course, or this was at Google, this was the same thing at Google
Mm-hmm.
on the AI work we were doing. We're developing an app. This was very, very similar in that we had 26 engineers on this project, and this was the pre kind of lockdown at Google now, where the performance reviews, the perfs are really strict, and there's a bottom 8% that's being pushed out. Dude, this was back in the day when innovation was everything.
Yeah.
And we were in product innovation, but in research. So we're in Google Brain, but this was actually a great example because we were asked to be innovators, every one of us on the team, and we all had patent conversations. One of the first conversations we had, and we used to do this repeatedly, is you got anything, let's get that IP up and run it through legal because they wanted to get all the patents out. Because the point is that everybody, to add to what you're saying, was unleashed to do the things that you're going to tell about in your story. No one was holding everyone was encouraged to take the tools we had and go wild. And so that's why Google takes so long to do things, or
Yeah.
used to. Now I don't know, but it's just
Well,
was always that
here's
idea.
an interesting story that
That's
relates
what
between
I want to add.
Motorola and Google
Yeah.
is I think it was like 20 years ago or so from today.
Mhm.
Uh, Google acquired the Motorola mobile phone business, right? And they bought it for $12 billion. And I had a friend who worked at Google in the phone business, and he was telling me that out of that $12 billion, a very, very small amount of it was actually the business part of Motorola's phones, the designs, the current inventory, the customer connections, all that stuff, the brand for the phones. He said that was like a very small part, less than $1 billion. $11 billion of the value was for Motorola's patent portfolio, and specifically around the features and the functionalities, especially location-based services. And out of my 20 patents, 8 of them are location-based services patents, and one of them was around location-based advertising. And I think that was extremely valuable for Google.
Yeah, there you go. There you go, Mark. You had to get your footprint in Google. Wow, what a story.
Well,
God,
yeah, no,
that
but
is a great.
I was doing that innovating because I love to create things. I'm a creator. I always like to be making stuff, right? All kinds of stuff. And when I
So,
joined
Mark,
Motorola,
for the sake of time here, because
yeah,
I was going to say that's kind of the crux of my question.
yeah,
That's kind of, and I'm sure you'll get into this in your story,
yeah,
but there are people like you, and then there's most of the world that doesn't have that impulse. Or you see this right now where you're seeing the program manager at Google, the PM. You see this in tech a lot right now, where the PM it used to be the ratio of like PM to engineers like 4 to 1, 6 to 1, but now that's disappearing. You're going to be asking the engineers to go out and interface directly with those users, with those
yeah,
customers, and
yeah,
introduce and do all these things, right? Okay, so when you get to that level you're seeing that the engineers they like being ICs. They don't necessarily want to get out there and do all that stuff. So
yeah,
there's this other thing that Mark's got that I can't put my finger on what it is because I'm the same way in my own world and in all my career. I've been the same way as a leader. I'm always looking out in landscape and I think of things that nobody thought of. I mean, that's what I do.
yeah,
But in my own programs, Brave Speak, all that stuff is really, I like to think it's innovative because I've taken the raw material and reformed it, reshaped it. So what does it take? So there's somewhat, I'm just going to say it straight up here. There's somewhat of an artist or artistry. It's not just the science. The
hmm,
building is the science. The execution is the process of discipline and science, of uh, development. But there's this thing that we can't put our fingers on. It's this place where your brain goes making connections. And I think to summarize my take on it, it's very human and it's wonderfully, but not everybody's got it. And I think your story, I hope, can help people learn it because I
yeah,
think it is learnable. It is doable, but you got to let go of something to go into that space, is all I'm saying.
yeah.
So,
No, no, you're absolutely right. And what I see, it's a continuum. And, when I work with people who want to become more innovative, more creative,
mhm,
you're not going to go from being a couch potato to Roger Federer, the greatest tennis player of all time. You're not going to make that kind of a huge leap because
mhm.
that person took his whole life to get
Life,
there.
yeah.
But you can go from being a couch potato to being someone who's fit, right? So in that same continuum, you can go from someone who's very operational into the numbers, the details, the process. And if you're just aware that there are steps you can take to start becoming more innovative,
There you go.
then it just becomes a pathway that you get on. And as long as you follow what I suggest, over time you will continue to become more and more innovative and see ways to apply innovation in all parts of your life to different degrees, right?
Mhm.
It depends a lot of what you know and what you're curious about. And that's part of the slides I'm going to cover in a little bit. Joe, any closing comments? You've got like 2 minutes.
Real quick, I'm just really happy you're doing this because this is what's needed for the marketplace, and it ties into what I'm doing. Because I'm not just teaching assertiveness. I'm not just teaching you to be clear and concise or executive presence. I'm preparing you for a workplace that's changing overnight as we speak. The demands on us to be able to be communicative, that is to say, to be able to express ourselves with confidence, clarity, it's through the roof now. The example I just gave you of engineers having to go interface directly with customers, that's unheard of, but it's here. So I'm excited about this. A couple spots left. Sign up for the assessment, everybody. Just jump in. Nobody's. I'm not going to bite you. The assessment's fun. I ask you a pointed question, but you'll learn something, and that's what I hope you do. Join me.
Yeah, and I'm very jealous. All you guys get to get a free assessment, but you know, I'm a coach, he's a coach. He
Uh,
has to protect his IP.
that's right. Watch out for this guy. I have to. He's my direct competitor. This guy. He seems real nice, but I don't know.
They
But
call
anyway,
me they call me the coach of coaches because I usually hand clients off, you know, because I'm
that
very
is true.
busy on my projects. But
You are you are very kind and generous. Mark is a great man. So I really envy you guys that you get to spend this time with Mark tonight and learn this because sounds like it's a set of tips that if you do this, you're going to get X result. And that's what it takes. You got to unpack it for folks and tell them exactly what to do. So that's
oh,
bravo, Mark.
okay.
Great.
We'll
So
talk to you soon, Joe. Take care.
yeah, we will. Okay, bye for now, everybody. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Sure. Hey, and while this QR code here is on the screen, what I recommend, just scan it, connect with Joe. You don't even have to do the assessment, but if you do it during this session, he will honor giving you a 30-minute free assessment. And he didn't put a time limit on when you could ask for the assessment. But I just recommend you do that because, hey, Joe is a very popular coach with our community, and I know he has a lot of experience. So let's jump into this. I'm going to share some slides here. And normally I like to talk, but you know, a picture says 1,000 words. And you know, if I have a million words I want to share, I better be showing some pictures, you know, to be able to do this in a short amount of time. So I'm going to go into slideshow mode here. Let me share the screen. Here we go. Everybody see this? You see you see two men exchanging plaques on a stage? Is that true? Is that what you guys see? Let me know. Okay, good. Good you see that. Okay. So I mentioned that I received this Distinguished Innovator recognition at Motorola, and I did it within 10 years. I had 10 patents within 10 years, but actually I hit 20 within the 10 years. 10 was what you needed to become recognized by the company. And that was from 84 different, 86 disclosures. So these are ideas that were good enough for the committee, including lawyers and the R&D guys and the heads of engineering to review. I would get up and I pitched 86 different ideas. And out of those, they decided to pursue 20. And so I was teamed up with a lawyer, and we would draft this thing and send it to the government, the patent office, and then they would maybe approve it right away, or they'd send it back and say, you need some clarification. You need to, you know, scrub this part. You can't claim this other thing. And I would usually be the one who rewrote it for the lawyer, and then the lawyer would send it out. Right. And, you know, some of my disappointments around this process is some of the best ideas were the ones the committee did not approve. And they only did that because they didn't see any place on the future roadmap where those ideas would be produced by our division in Motorola. And it was like so disappointing for me. There were so many great ideas. And I wish, you know, they would have just patented it and then they could have sold it, or they could have handed it over to another division that was developing something else where that patent would be just protecting the idea. But in any case, every year at the patent banquet, instead of a Christmas party, we had a patent banquet. I would go up on stage and I would receive an armful of these plaques, and the GM would say great things about me. But it didn't happen overnight. I mean, the ability to uh, to be able to produce a patentable idea was something I had to work at. In fact, the first 10 ideas were shot out of the sky, and I had to learn what the process was and actually how to identify something that was, that could go the distance. And I learned, right? I was a curious person. That's how I got to create ideas in the first place. Where did the curiosity come from, though? I'm going to tell you where it originated. So when I was 5, 6 years old, I lived in Switzerland. In fact, that's where I spent the early part of my childhood. And my dad was in Vietnam for many years, and my mom took me and my sister, and we lived with her parents in a city called Basel, Switzerland. And I was always an early bird. I was always up at like 4, 5 a.m. I would wake up and everyone else in the house would sleep and they were light sleepers. So I was not allowed really to do much. I mean, you see the toys on the floor there, but I didn't dare play with them because they may make noise. If I made a tower out of blocks and it spilled over, someone would complain at breakfast. What were you doing making all that noise? So for an hour or two, I'd be sitting in my room as the light came through and it would shine on the things in my room. And I would just ask myself, like, why are these things here? Who brought them here? Who bought these things? Who made these things? What is it made of? What's inside? Right? How old is this thing? And I would look at everything on the bookshelf. I mean, I was there for years. I had so much time on my hands, and I would be looking at these things and just imagining. And to me, it was this sense of curiosity. With nothing else to do, I would just use my imagination and I would try to figure things out, even though I had no internet to look up anything and there was nobody there to answer questions. And that was like the origin for my curiosity. From that point forward, as I went through life, everything I saw, if I had a minute to look at something, I would be asking myself questions about it. Whose is that? How did it get here? What does it do? How old is it? What's inside? How does it work? Right? Is it the best one of its kind? Right? So I'd always imagine these things. And as I got older, I started to take things apart. I would take apart the toaster, the alarm clock, everything that had screws on it, or that could be disassembled, I would disassemble it. And the first couple of times I did it, my mom got pretty angry because I couldn't figure out how to put them together. But then I learned how to pay attention when I took something apart, where things went and in what order. And I would take things apart. I'd look at them and I would learn like what's inside these things and I would be able to put them back together again. And that skill came in pretty handy years later when I decided to modify my own car. I bought a car, a Jeep Wrangler, and everything on that car can be taken off. You can take everything off, doors, floors, dashboards. And I did 21 modifications on my Jeep. And I'd never done anything like that before, and I just decided, it would be so cool. I wonder if I can. And I did research and figured out what things I could replace that I would like. I replaced the roof with a convertible top. I replaced the running boards with automated running boards that automatically come down when my doors open and up when the doors closed. So it's easy to step in and out. Changed all the lighting system, all kinds of things. And, at one point, I had the car on my driveway almost completely taken apart, seats off, doors off, and I was rewiring that thing. And after 3 hours of installing something complicated, I was only halfway through. I didn't know I was halfway through. I thought I was only 10% of the way through because my car was like almost completely disassembled except for the engine and the driving controls. And I started to get this sense of panic, like it's going to get dark soon. And how is this all going to strap together? But I didn't give up. And I just kept working at it step by step, piece by piece. And eventually it all came back together, works perfectly. After 6 years, it's still everything works. It's wonderful. And so it's from curiosity, right? Curiosity is what can drive you. And curiosity is something that comes from a desire. Like I said, if you're an operational person or you don't think you're creative, having the desire to become innovative is enough to get you thinking and getting you curious. Look around when you go somewhere. Notice things. Think about things, right? Get off your phone and social media and just be in the moment and use your brain to start figuring things out or imagining. That is a great way to become more curious and feel a reward from curiosity because you will learn a lot. Your brain will expand. And all of the things that you consider and you contemplate become memories inside your head. And when you have to figure things out and get creative, it's all of these random images, ideas, contexts, experiences that can help you come up with new ideas when you apply your creative thinking to solving a problem. You never know which of your experiences or the skills that you learned that you didn't know when you weren't curious. You'll never know when those thoughts will come in and be something useful in part of a solution that you need, right? So that was me. That was where it started. And then in high school, I started getting into tactical and strategic military board games. Very, very complicated. You'd have these giant maps of either a region or a country or the world, and you'd have all these little units, these little cardboard units with designated what they were and what they could do. And we'd usually get like four of us together, two against two, and we'd play these things. They would take like a whole day, sometimes a whole weekend. It was very intense. And we had these big rule books with tables in it, and you'd have to roll dice and figure out who won, who lost, who was damaged, and and over the period of playing these things for a number of years, I started to recommend changes to the game to my friends. Say, hey, this really sucks. This would be so much better if instead of following this thing in the rule book, why don't we agree da da da? We started to write our own rules to make the game better. And it would usually be some observation I had that would make the game e easier to play or more realistic in our context or faster moving. And eventually my friend said, hey, like you've made so many changes to this game. Why don't you make your own game? So when I was a junior in high school, I did. I created my own two games and I sold them. There were game companies around the country that were constantly looking for new games that they could produce as a board game in a box and sell at like a hobby store, at a game store, right? And the two games I came up with was a tennis game and a boxing game. And this is before video games. In fact, there were video games in the early 80s, but they really were terrible and boring, and they didn't really involve any brain power. It was just moving little things around like ping pong, just blocking the little thing on the screen. It was really boring, right? And so board games were more intellectually stimulating, right? More challenging and rewarding. And so I came up with these. It was actually a platform. Both games used a very similar approach with the small differences. And there was the game company in New Jersey that gave me $500, 250 for each game. And I remember my dad used to come into my room, which was like a mad wizard's workshop with all my different projects spread out. And he would just look at me and he'd shake his head. He's like, why aren't you outside doing something? And I would be in my room creating something, right? And eventually he had these checks come in the mail and they were addressed to me. And he's like, what are these? And I said, well, these are these two games, a tennis game and a boxing game. And the company bought the rights and I sent off all the documentation and the maps I created, the boards. And he just shook his head and says, I was so wrong. I should have been encouraging you instead of telling you to go out and get sunburned with the rest of the kids. But that's just the progression of the curiosity, how to make something better, how to make something instead of, right? Because I couldn't just make another war game. There were just hundreds of war games out there, but there weren't any real good sports games. And in fact, I have a football game that I've created, and I play that when I get together with my brothers on Thanksgiving. We have a board game. You play football, And if you love football, it's a game that you'd really enjoy. But it's just something personal, for me and my brothers. So I don't have any intent to sell it, right? But this was the second stage. The third stage is early on in my career at Motorola. I was in product planning and I always wanted to express things with my computer, with my applications, because I could explain things easier with images and with some animation. But we were not allowed to buy any software that did animation because we were not really in that business. And finance and accounting would never approve when I said I want some animation software. So I used three different programs to create animations that would run in slideshow mode on PowerPoint. I had a graphics program, I had a video program, and then I had PowerPoint. And I would go jumping from one application to the next. It was very time consuming, but I was able to animate how networks worked, our very complicated networks, how the signals progress and how users would go from one area to the next or use different features. And management was amazed. So we had the Taiwan National Police working with our company and also with our competitor GE to do a nationwide communication systems, Taiwan National Police communication systems. It was the largest contract Motorola was ever going to sell to that date in that sector. And the management team came to me and said, "Hey, we love what you do with all these like product design ideas and network proposals. We have Taiwan coming in and they're going to buy one of our big systems. Can you develop some slides we can use to explain how the system works? Because we're going to be asking for like a lot of money, tens and tens of millions of dollars, one project." And so I did. And guess what? I was this like wet behind the ears. I'd been with the company for 2 years. And here I was with all these GMs and VPs and generals. And I was presenting animations about our network technology, right? And that's how I used innovation to overcome a challenge, how to communicate, demonstrate more effectively, and overcome the limitations. I bought all of the software finance was allowing me to buy, and I figured out on my own how to make these things work together and create animations, right? So that's something you can do too. Work within the limitations, use what's available, and try to crack the code. Just another application of innovation. Now, one of the opportunities I had for innovating was long commutes. So I bought a truck because I lived in downtown Chicago. And when it snowed, it was a lot better than my sports car. It didn't slide around at all. And it was lower cost insurance. So I bought this when I moved downtown Chicago. I had these long 1 hour each way commutes. And what I would do is I would turn the radio off when I'm stuck in traffic. And I would just be thinking through a patent idea or a feature that I was going to try to put into a new product or some technology, where can I integrate this to enable, automate, do something. So this is something else you can do is get away from the social media, try to find long windows where you can think about something, a problem you're trying to solve, something that you need to get out of the box. We're always stuck in these routines. And when you turn the radio off and you just apply yourself and think, like I swim a lot. I swim an hour a few times a week as part of my exercise routine. And all that time in the pool when I'm by myself, I can apply just to thinking through things, thinking about a challenge, thinking about a conversation, thinking about, what if, right? If you jog, if you're on an exercise machine, like you're on a bicycling machine or you bicycle, those are great opportunities for you to be thinking through problems. Instead of being stuck with some barriers, try to think around those barriers. Use these windows of opportunity uh, to reflect, to explore, and think outside of your own industry or your own process. If you're in finance and you're aware that there's other industries that maybe have parallel processes, try to figure out what they do and see if any of that could apply to a finance process, a manufacturing process, a delivery process, whatever your line of work is. Even how you manage people. If you understand how other companies create happy workplace environments, learn about them and see what elements of those can be integrated into your own. That's thinking outside the box. Don't think about the way your company has always done things or how other departments in your own company have always done things. Like in my own divisions, I always came up with my own ways to engage with my teammates, people who worked on my organization. And they all loved being in my organization because we had our own culture, right? So if you're a manager, a leader, you can innovate around how to create the culture and think about how other successful cultures work to keep their employees and make them more productive, right? There's tons of opportunities for innovation in all areas. So you want to build up your innovation skill because you don't just say, I'm going to innovate, and then it just starts flowing. Innovation, think of innovation as a sport that has a combination of different skills that you can use. Benchmarking, ideation, right? Focus groups, discussions, research on future technologies or future processes, right? So there's all kinds of skills that go into the ability to innovate. And every innovation opportunity may rely using different skills in different proportion. So to be able to innovate well, you should think about the things underneath. Let's start with discipline. Discipline is, like I said, don't be too addicted to filling your available time with social media. It will just suck all your time up and it will cloud your brain away from reflective, creative thought or research, your ability to analyze or learn about things. Social media addiction will kill your curiosity. Instead of watching some goofy TikTok videos or, following a debate or following sports or whatever, you could be learning about something you discovered you knew nothing about. And some of the things you don't know anything about might give you clues or spark thoughts years later or even the next day on something you're thinking about. So have the discipline to create lots of white space when you're by yourself, to be thinking and processing and learning, right? Second one is mindset, growth mindset, right? So discipline, if you think about innovating as the sport, discipline is like your cardio, right? Cardio every day, do your cardio every day, have your discipline, create that white space. Mindset is like agility. Mindset will help you from being blocked. Open that mindset, have a growth mindset. Be willing to throw away everything that you think is and start from scratch on solving a problem as if there was no existing process. That's an open mindset. Also, ask other people. Also, pitch to other people the mindset to get feedback. If they liked only 20% of your new idea, guess what? You got 20% to build on. They like the 20%. Now, what can replace the 80% they didn't like? It didn't work, right? The next one is creativity. That's like your muscle, right? The more you trust yourself to be creative, like I say, creativity is my superpower. And I learned that if I trust in my creativity and I use my creativity, I become actually more creative. I become more confident. And it doesn't matter that the first patent ideas I submitted got shot down. I kept going. And guess what? Number 11, number 12, they became patents and then onwards. You see how that works? Have confidence in your ability to become creative and grow creativity. Another one is exploration. That's like the training. When I go to the gym, I always try different combinations of exercises. I see someone doing something different. Sometimes I'll try it. Maybe that's better than something else I'm doing. And that's the training. You go in and you try to fine tune your collection of exercises so you are better at delivering on the sport. And then there's innovation, the sport itself, right? All these different things build up to help you, prepare you, and make you more effective at innovating. Now, Joe said, he was going through like the corporate process of innovating, which is focus groups and research and talking to customers. I am coming at this as an individual because I use innovation both personally, everywhere, all aspects of my life. And I'm very much coming from the inside and trying to reach out and drive ideas out there and see what sticks, and then change it based on feedback and improve them based on what else I learn. I replace things. So it's very much as center driven for me. It can be for you. You don't need a team. You can innovate by yourself. Now, let me ask you this. Why would a comfortable person be driven to innovate? So you need to come out of your comfort zone. You need to be comfortable with discomfort. Get out of your comfort zone, reach for new experiences, reach for different people, reach for new skills. I am constantly learning new skills. I am constantly changing the types of goals I am trying to reach in exercise, in finance, in all aspects. Even just learning for the fun of learning something. I see something in the museum, never heard of it. Guess what? I'm on ChatGPT and I'm digging into it and I'm admiring this sculpture from this artist I never heard of. I'm finding out all about him and all about the style, right? So it's about just opening the pathways in your brain, getting out of the comfort zone. So mindset, people will ask you to think outside the box. Well, I have a better idea. Live outside the box. Don't be in the box. And it's back to comfort zone. What everyone else is doing, what everyone else thinks is normal, on the surface, they could see that you're not doing anything strange, but don't think of yourself in the box. Don't think of yourself having to do what everyone else is doing, thinking what everyone else is thinking, and dare to be doing different things. Maybe things they don't like. Like I'm not into golf and I'm a business guy and they'd always invite me to golf and I would just politely decline. I always had something else I was going to do because there were other things I wanted to learn and do. And golf was a tremendous time suck, right? It takes a lot of time, not just playing it, it's practicing it and going and buying clubs and all this kind of stuff. Didn't want to make that commitment. I wanted to be free. And other people, they were all just being in the box, putting the time in there. If you love golf, good for you. But that's just one example of how I didn't want to be in the box, right? So stay curious, explore more, embrace new approaches. When you see a new approach, charge at it, figure out everything you can, take it apart, put it back together. Maybe it's for you, maybe it's not for you. Maybe part of it is something you can take, right? Learn constantly. And guess what? Try new things, try to develop some skill. If you love it, become a master of it. If you don't, move on to some other skill. Check the box. Because even just having introductory experience in something may give you some new insights that will allow you to innovate somewhere else later. Another thing is when I sit and I have a project, I do these things. I turn on some media. It could be a TV show, it can be some music. It doesn't even have to be music I like. It's in the background and it's stimulating my senses. And I'll have a nice big cup of coffee, smelling the aroma, taking sips, right? I'm smelling it. I have things in my office that have different feel, like the surface of my desk. I've got different things. So it's like sensory. I've got stimulating artwork, right? And on the screen, sometimes if it's a movie or whatever, that's just there. It's just giving you stimulation while I'm working on my tasks. And you see this woman is surrounded by a very stimulating environment, good vibes, good ideas. She's got some words there. She's got the coffee brewing. She's got the candles, probably got some smell to it as well. She's got the nice artwork and the plant, right? Different colored pens in the jar. Just try to surround yourself with stimulation because your brain responds to stimulation from all your senses. The more stimulated your brain is, the more the synapses, the nerves in your brain are firing. That helps you to be more creative. It works. Now, exploration is a habit. I told you when I was a kid, taking things apart and putting them back together again most of the time. Exploration is from the curiosity. What's inside? How does it work? What are these pieces? Right? How does it work? How to make it better. If I was going to design this toaster, how would I do it? This toaster's awfully bulky. Why does it take up so much space on the counter? Why can't it be flatter? Why can't it be sideways? What would be the advantage? How come the controls are so clunky and the knob comes off? How irritating. How come the cord is so short? Right? How can you make it better? What's blocking the progress? Right? Was it cost? Was it technology? Was it that they had all these extra parts left over from a design from 1950s? Right? Sometimes what blocks the process is just doesn't make a lot of sense except convenience or habit. So make curiosity your habit. And it's not just about taking things apart, it's about analyzing things. Now, if you look at this woman sitting at her computer and she's got the whiteboard with all those sticky notes, post-it notes, guess what my office looks like? I have two whiteboards because my office I put in the corner. I got one whiteboard here with post-it notes, and I got another whiteboard there. And when I think of something or I hear something, I have a whole bunch of these post-it notes, different colors, right on my desk. I just quickly write a note and I stick it where it needs to be on either one of the boards, right? So I got one for pipeline actions, things to do in the future, things I got to do this week, urgent due today, my checklist reminders, and I've got reference information. I have new ideas, and I've got my projects, right? Different stages. So if I come up with an idea for a project, I'll write it down in the right color, post-it note for that project, and I'll stick it right there on the board. And then beginning of the day, I do a scan, right? Especially urgent due today. And when I got free time, I look at my projects and see if there's something I can do on my projects. So create that for yourself in your work area, especially if you have a home office. Get a cheap whiteboard, get post-it notes. When you're on a conference call, somebody says something, it sparks an idea, write it down right away and stick it somewhere on the board. That's gold. That is innovation fuel right there. Another thing I would do, and I still do, is deep discussions with experts. I got in the habit of doing that in the early days in tech, is I would have ideas and I would have things I want the devices to do. And I was trying to develop new features based on what customers said, they were looking for a problem solved, and I came up with a feature that would solve that problem. And then I'd go to one of the experts in the business and I'd say, how come we don't have a feature like this already? I want to create a feature like this. What's stopping me from doing it? Right? And they would say, oh, well, this transistor only goes to this, or the knob can only have 18 spaces on it, and whatever he'd come up with, or she. And then I would learn what the limitations are, and I would brainstorm. I'd say, hey, what if we had two knobs on there? Like one is 1 through 12, and then number two is 13 to 24. And they're like, oh, that's a great idea. You have this little like category. Category A is channels 1 to 12, and then category 2 is 13 to 24. So that's kind of out of the box thinking that I would come up with. I didn't want to be in that box, right? So embrace it and go to the experts, pick their brain. Come with ideas. Don't be embarrassed. It's like my first 10 patent ideas got shot down. It didn't discourage me at all. It made me even better. So this is the thing. Experts will not only tell you what doesn't work, but they may give you a clue for another idea you can work on and come back that will work. A lot of us have been in these meetings, or these organization meetings where the big the big head honcho, the GM, the VP, CFO, whoever says, "Hey, I'm paying a lot for today's brainstorming workshop, so let's have a ton of solutions out of you guys. Let's go. Chop, chop." Well, I got bad news for that guy. First of all, smoking in the workplace is a no-no. He shouldn't smoke a cigar in the workplace. Secondhand smoke is bad. The second thing is you can't just turn on a spigot just because you have a bunch of engineers in a room for 2 days. Doesn't mean they're going to be able to crank out good solutions at the end of 2 days. A lot has to go into it over a period of time. It's a process, right? What those workshops are good for is getting people started and talking about what is the thing we have to solve and what is the thing maybe that's blocking us at the moment. And it's all the stuff in the middle, all the new ideas, all the different approaches, thinking outside the box and starting over. That happens over a long period of time and discipline, right? So think of innovating on anything as a marathon, right? This is you, right? It could be a woman, could be a man, but this is you. You're starting out and you don't know all the different paths or how many times you have to loop and circle and redo this part of the marathon, but it's going to take you a while to get to the end. You may have to stop frequently. You may have to even start over. You might have to start over. You innovate into a dead end, it's not going to get you where you got to go, right? So you just start over. I'm going to tell you something. Uh, I had quite a vision when I was like 10 years into it. I had all these patents, and I had a real bug for location-based services. And I was working in the low end of the radio spectrum at the time, the low-cost radios. And I came up with a proposal to integrate all these different GPS technologies together, power supplies, antennas. It was like this huge, complicated thing. And there was just no way in heck we were going to sell this to the low end distribution channel. But I was able to work on it and I was able to show it to upper management. And eventually they took those ideas and they brought it over to the public safety division and they created innovations and improvements on the GPS units that went into the police cars. Sad I couldn't do it in the product line I was in at the time, but that's like the marathon. It took me months to think this all through and identify the parts and order the pieces and show that it can work, right? It's a marathon. Sometimes it makes sense to start at the finish line. Where is the place we need to be? Now, how can I work backwards? Go back in time and uncover what are the elements of the perfect design and how can we get to those components in that perfect design? And guess what? When you hop back to the finish, you already see some ideas that you had, some alternatives, some options. You're further along down the pathway because when you started where you need to end up and look backwards and say, what are the elements that would make this a perfect product or perfect service for the intended users? You will have insights from going through that exercise, looking that way, and you come back to the beginning and say, oh, I already know these kind of ideas are much stronger to get me to the finish line. Okay. So those are some tips. I hope they were useful to you. Of course, I could spend hours and hours talking about this, giving you examples. If there are any questions there, I'd love to answer them. If you found this useful, let me know. Uh, Hopefully, it helped some of you identify that you could be an innovator or you could be more innovative. First step is just desiring to do so. And this chart here, right? Develop that discipline, creating that white space in your daily calendars to think and reflect. Doesn't even have to be daily, but periodically, a few times a week at least, if you're trying to solve a problem that requires you to be innovative. Mindset, throw away everything you know, start over, or look at what needs to be replaced, try and think about that, talk to experts, look at other industries. How do they solve those kinds of problems? Is it applicable where the process you're using or the product that you're working on? Creativity, right? Get lots of stimulation, create the right environment for yourself. Exploration, learn, be curious. When you see something you don't know, you say, "Oh, I've never heard of the Medicis. Who are the Medicis?" I'm going to write that down. I'm going to look up the Medicis. Go to ChatGPT as a starting point. Who are the Medicis? And then it will give you sources in the answer. And you can click on those sources. You can learn more. If it's more interesting at that point, there are movies about the Medicis. There's YouTube videos on the Medicis. There's books you can get on the Medicis. Those were like some of the earliest bankers, modern bankers, right? For the Western world. And then innovation itself, right? It's integrating all those components together. It's the application of all these other things in direction of solving a problem. One of the keys is identifying in as best detail as you can what the outcome needs to be of your innovation. How is how do you know the problem gets solved? What are the requirements that need to get filled? Knowing the dot on the map that you need to arrive at is a key focus for actually getting there after your marathon. Okay, well, it's 7:09, and I hope I hope you've been let me get rid of this. I hope you've been enjoyed this. Again, here's the Joe's free session, and then the workshop is up here. I think he said there were 2 seats left in one of the teams, and extremely valuable 4 days. There's 4 windows starting Saturday, and then there's 3 Saturdays. Then there's 4th of July, no class there, and then the week after on a Saturday, there's the last one. Okay, that's it for me. And next week, we have an interesting discussion about leadership by someone who's getting his book published. So I'm very interested to pick his brain and hear what he has to say. All right. Y'all take care. Bye bye now.